Hello and welcome to our weekly Integral Love Relationship Web Jam. My name is Martin Utschig and I'm the author of Integral Relationships, a Manual for Men, and my new book, Sex, Purpose, Love, Couples in Integral Relationships Creating a Better World. And today I'm thrilled to welcome my new friend, Chris Saade, to our Web Jam. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Martin. Thank you for inviting me.
And I read your book that you co-authored with Andrew Harvey last week, and it's really struck me that we both had kind of like the same idea. And initially I wanted to call my book actually Evolutionary Integral Relationships, and then change the title to Sex, Purpose, Love. Can you turn down your volume a little bit? Because I was just hearing an echo, but that's okay. So we have Mike on the call and Gustav from Germany. And please participate by typing your name, not you, Chris, but the people who are on the show live, and your questions and comments at the bottom right of your screen. And if you're single and looking for a partner, you may also share your integralsingles.com screen name or your Facebook profile name. And you may also join us live by clicking on the hand symbol at the top right of your screen. And once I accept your request, Chris, you have to turn the volume down a little bit, please.
My volume, okay.
Yeah, because I hear
it better.
And if you have headphones handy, maybe you can plug them in.
Can I go get them?
Do you have headphones available?
I'll have to go look for them.
Oh, that's okay. We'll make it work. Anyway, if you want to come online, you click on that hand symbol, want to join the conversation, and a small plugin will be downloaded, and your webcam and your microphone will be tested, and that works best in Google Chrome. So I want to introduce Chris. Chris grew up in Lebanon, so we're both expats. And when did you move to the US, Chris?
1978, actually, a long time ago.
You beat me quite by a few years. I came here in 95. But in our pre-conversation, we found a lot of things where, we find American culture to be quite different and interesting and captivating. As I already mentioned, Chris is the co-author with Andrew Harvey of the recent book, Evolutionary Relationships, Passion, Authenticity, Activism. That's the subtitle. So we already have three things to talk about. Chris is also a life coach, psychological and a spiritual teacher, and the co-director of the Olive Branch Center, which is also your website, right? olivebranchcenter.com or .org. And Chris has also directed 3 nonprofit humanitarian organizations and 1 for-profit business. After years of serving as a psychotherapist in private practice, Chris spent 2 decades, wow, training therapists, coaches, and ministers in the model he developed, which is called engaged authenticity, and also referred to as individual authenticity and global solidarity. So obviously I wanted to talk to you.
I'm glad we're talking.
Yeah. So my first question is, what inspired you to write this book, Evolutionary Relationships?
Well, I have been for a long time fascinated with the concept of authenticity, of really trying to be who we are and to incarnate who we are, to kind of live our name. And then out of that, I was very interested to see what is the relationship between authenticity and developing a romantic or a loving relationship. And of course, these two are tied together, that the more we can be authentic and the more we can respect the authenticity of our partner, the more we can have passion in our relationship. So I that and in my work as a coach and in training therapists, that became central. There's a whole new trend now. It's still a minority trend, but a trend in psychology, which we call the psychology of identity. rather than the psychology of causality, you know, what made me do this and what made me do that. Rather, who am I? Who am I and who are you, and how can we build a relationship where two freedoms come together and co-create, co-create a garden where love can fly. So it's more based on identity. Same thing in parenting. Rather than why is my child doing that, who is my child? What is the identity of my child? How can I support my child be who they are and do it intelligently and gracefully and lovingly? But I'm looking at the identity of my child. And there's something, and I think you would agree, Martin, when we look at somebody else and ask the question, you know, what is your authenticity? I want to know your authenticity as much as I can. That's already love. That's already a question that comes out of love, and a gaze that is a gaze of love.
Now, I struggle with the term authenticity, or with the concept of authenticity, because in indigo theory, which is, of course, my background, derived from Ken Wilber, you know, we see humans as constantly developing in consciousness and in spiritual awareness, in psychological shadow work or psychological healing, and so on and so forth. And also, you know, who we perceive ourselves to be, I think, is very contextual, you know, depending on who we're interacting with. I mean, I feel different now. My authentic self feels different now talking to you than, you know, after our conversation, maybe I go for a walk. So how do you define this authenticity? And is there sort of like a core of unchanging authentic self?
I think so. But I do agree with you that there is a dynamic part of ourself that is constantly evolving and constantly developing. I mean, if I would look at a video of myself at the age of 30, I would be smiling, laughing, and having sweat, like, because I've changed so much, right? So I'm all with you that there is a development of consciousness, a development of intelligence, a development of awareness. You know, we act differently, we learn new tools. So that is a beautiful side. But, you know, let me take the analogy of a tree. You know, I live here in San Diego, and I think you too have palm trees. I love palm trees, you know. And a palm tree is a palm tree. And you can look at a willow tree or an oak tree. Now, these trees with time develop, and they change how they look. Their branches change, their colors change. I mean, a palm tree today and a palm tree 10 years ago looks very, very different. But there is that core of the palm tree being a palm tree. And there's a core of the oak tree being an oak tree. So what I have discovered through my work as a therapist, through my work as a coach, through my work in the peace movement also, that I've done, as you know, for about 15 years, I've seen that there are some traits, and following with children, I mean, you could see it with children, there are some, what we would call archetypal traits. There are some traits that never change. Give you an example, like let's say a personality of a person is a wanderer. You know, they like to discover, they like to wander, they like new experiences. My God, we see that in them at the age of 3, and we see that at the age of 60. The person who's an organizer, who likes to organize, who like to manage, who like to, you find the child at the age of 4 already putting things together in a way that looks good. That person will be there all their life. Now, that has to develop, that has to mature, hopefully. That has to become more graceful, more efficient, more open, more. So there is a lot of development. I fully agree with you. But there is a core, and that core, you know, is tremendously important. If I'm a palm tree, I want to be seen as a palm tree and recognized as a palm tree and loved as a palm tree and have the freedom to be a palm tree. And if I'm a willow tree, I want to have the freedom to be a willow tree. So I see them as really two sides of who we are, a side that is constantly evolving and hopefully constantly moving in greater consciousness, greater awareness, like you say, in integral philosophy, and a side of us that is there, you know, is there, is kind of our signature, our gate, you know, like horses have gates. I love horses. I've had horses, and I just love them. And every horse has its signature, has its gate.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so would you say that becoming more and more authentic is becoming more and more our type of tree that we are? I mean, I'm still a little.
Yes, very much so. It's having the permission, because as we become more ourselves, then we can flower and unfold and find the depth of the wisdom and the depth of the destiny that we are to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find our path, which again is my path and it's your path.
Yeah.
And that path is determined by who I am. If, let's say, if a person is a very assertive person, their path is going to be very different from a person who's basically a peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, a peacemaker can learn some assertiveness, of course. And an assertive person can learn some flexibility, of course. And that adds a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But a peacemaker is not going to all of a sudden become this incredible assertive warrior out there.
Mm-hmm.
They might learn some skill and unfold. So let's say if I'm a peacemaker and I go deep into my peacemaking, I find then the treasure of who I am, and I find the depth of who I am, and then I can incarnate my own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
While at the same time growing and unfolding and developing. So it's a paradox right there.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows freedom. It allows freedom. We see it with children, for example, allowing the children, for that child to really embody their true nature, and not being told you have to be this way or you have to be that way. Because there is a danger there. If we don't see a core, then we are constantly trying to change the other person. And that in relationships, as you know, is detrimental, trying to change our partner as if our partner can become anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I believe they can't. They can't. They can grow and develop and learn skills, but there is an essence in them that I have to love or not be with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was my next question then. How does that impact relationships? You know, when we are inauthentic or move towards authenticity, and how can relationships support us in becoming more authentic?
So true. So true. I mean, that is a question right on, Martin. Well, you know, I think through authenticity, we have a new myth of relationships, a new vision of relationships. And relationships become a dance of two freedoms coming together and seeing if they can co-create together. And that's very different from the old model. You know, the problem with psychotherapy, the psychotherapy that was based very much on causality and change and causality and change, then we saw how it really weakened relationships and made them almost impossible, because we come to relationships with the idea that my partner can change. I can get my partner to change. Maybe I can challenge them or coax them or seduce them or convince them, but somehow I'm going to make them change. And that has created unbelievable tensions in relationship and has weakened relationship and has taken passion out of relationship. You can't be passionate to somebody who's trying to change you. I mean, it's very hard to feel romantic passion or emotional passion or sexual passion to a person who's trying to change you. From the perspective of authenticity, it becomes, you are a freedom. You are an embodied freedom. I am a freedom. How can we co-create? How can you be transparent about who you are? And I respect that. And I'm going to be transparent and you respect that. And then we see where are the common bridges, where are the common areas that we can develop. And there are some areas that we cannot develop.
Yeah.
Every relationship will have lacks. Yeah. Every two people coming together realize that we can be great at developing that, but there are areas we cannot develop, and we can bless that and accept that and honor that. And focus on where our authenticity, where do they create electricity? Where do they create magic? Yeah. Focus on where the magic is possible, rather than try consistently to open doors that were not made to open.
Yes. So Michael comments, relationships imply authenticity, otherwise they're just transactions, as in business.
That's beautiful. That's
Thank you,
I might steal that quote.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Very
So
much.
So I want to backpedal a little bit because, we both wrote these books, and my personal journey was, that first I wrote this book, Integral Relationships, which in essence allowed me to meet women at whatever level of development or state of consciousness there are. And that was a huge improvement, but it also kind of like put me behind the mask, right? I didn't show up authentically. I just tried to mirror or mimic or meet a woman wherever she was. And that was a huge improvement and has improved hopefully many relationships. And I also wrote that for men because women often told me, I don't feel met by men. Where are all the good men? Where are all the conscious men? Where are all the masculine and embodied feminine? And there were all these demands, right, that I didn't understand with my German cultural upbringing. I just thought, if I bring home the dough, right, bring the money, and I'm a good lover and I'm not an ass, I'm lovable. But then I realized, no, that's not even close to what modern women want, and postmodern women want. And then through Andrew Cohen, I heard about evolutionary spirituality, and that I'm not separate from the evolutionary process, but an integral part of it, and that whatever I bring into the world becomes part of the evolutionary process that I'm not separate from.
Yes.
And then my next insight was from Brian Wetton, that a lot of helping professionals struggle between this more feminine approach of doing good in the world and the more masculine approach of managing our business, so to speak, marketing ourselves, doing all these technical things, business. And I had this deep longing. All of a sudden I realized I want to be with someone who shares my evolutionary purpose, right? So that's sort of like my story around that, which then led me to write a 800-page book, which, your book was really fascinating because it added a whole different dimension to evolutionary relationships that I haven't even deeply considered, which is a mystical approach and a psychological approach, I would say. And you and Harvey Andrew Harvey play wonderfully off each other in these two areas, I found. While my book is more philosophical and scientific in brain science and social science and looking at ecology and so on and so forth. So I wrote this book based on my longing and the short experience with a woman who said she would share my purpose. But the irony is, and we're almost like brothers if you look at the two of us in the same glasses, same beard. You don't shave your head, I do. But we're both single, more or less single, right?
We are. Well,
so here we are, right? And then at the end of the book, there is a sentence that really, I was glad to read that, because throughout, the more I read your book, the more I went there is again two guys, and there's me and other men who have this idea of evolutionary purpose. And of course, there's also women who somewhat resonate with that, but I see more men, again, being sort of like the leader of that advancement into novelty. And I wonder a little bit, you say some women are understandably really angry at men from what they have experienced throughout their lifetime. Right. And so I wonder a little bit what has been the feedback that you received, and as you went out and possibly dating, looking for a partner, when you're again explaining as a man sort of like this idea of sharing a purpose. And I just say one more thing that I found, that younger couples and younger women and men seem to be much more open to this idea, because I feel they grew up in a different time, and the women seem to be less wounded and feel less repressed by male power than women in our age group are. So I know I talked a lot, but I wanted to kind of open that can of worm and address that, and specifically get your feedback. What is your experience around that?
Well, Martin, my experience having been in this field for the last, 35 years or more, is that it's mainly women who are leading it. And I feel a great gratitude toward women. I mean, women have been leading, actually, and populating the movement toward greater consciousness. And so, I don't know, my experience has been that women have taken us very, very far. And it kind of started with the feminine theology. And feminine theology wanted us to come back to the body. And the body is authentic. And the body is unique. I mean, it's fascinating that with 8 billion people, there is no one body that is same as the other body. And the idea that you have to assume your body, you have to accept your body, you have to accept how it looks, how it feels, how it moves in the world, that's already opened a huge door to the idea of authenticity. Now, I understand that men have been more interested in action, kind of archetypally more in action. But what is fascinating with this new idea of authenticity and solidarity, Martin, is that we are looking now very differently at a lot of things. For example, let's take purpose. Now, purpose today is not what is a good idea. It's not like some leader is going to tell us we all have to go help animals, or we all have to go, clean rivers, or we all have to go do that. Now, purpose has to emerge from the authentic heart and the authentic personality. Every individual has to discover their purpose that comes from their authenticity. That connection with purpose and freedom, purpose and authenticity, is very new in our consciousness. Yeah. Because before, men were like, yeah, let's do something, let's act, and we're going to do what is correct, the correct idea. So we will have leaders that will define what is correct. Now it's a whole other paradigm. Is find what is emerging from your authenticity. If you're an amazing caregiver, you might be called to work with animals, or called to work with sick people. If you're a great challenger, you might be called to bring your voice in politics. But you're going from your authenticity. It's not anymore the call to correctness. It's the call to what is true and real in that person. And that is fascinating. I believe this is opening up this with the whole idea of integral development of consciousness. They are opening possibilities for us as human beings that are amazing. Now, will we go into them or not? We'll have to see. We'll have to see where we're going as a human race. But shifting from correctness to the real. And if I may say one more thing, added to how that shift impacts relationship. One thing I have discovered, and I'm sure you probably have seen it and explored it too. The number one killer of relationship is, and I, as a coach, I've sat with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of couples and kind of heard the same thing, and I've seen it in my own relationship. Two people get in a dialogue, and rather than sharing their authenticity, they start debating what is the correct point. Like, if I want to spend the weekend like that, I'm going to prove to you that my position is correct. And that implies that your position is incorrect. And that brings an atmosphere of violence. So the other person saying, no, it's not correct that we do that. We should do this because your mother said that, and my cousin said that, and the weather is like that. So what you have are two lawyers now trying to prove that they're correct. While passion is out of the window and warm feelings are out of the window. With authenticity, there is no more correctness. There is, what is your authenticity? What is your heart today? Your heart is you want to go to the beach. My heart is I would like to spend the day working in the garden. Okay? I hear you. I honor you. You're not correct and you're not incorrect. You just are. And I'm not correct. I'm not incorrect. Now, can we find a bridge? Can we find a place of co-creation? That changes the whole dialogue between people. Of course, there's places of incorrectness, like, lying or raping or stealing. I mean, the 10 Commandments, of course. But outside of these 10 Commandments, we are now saying, honey, tell me your freedom. Tell me who you are. And I am not going to prove it correct or incorrect. I'm going to listen to it and hear it. And women in general have responded and taught us that. I mean, but also women and men, all as human beings, we are tempted by that correctness. But the correctness is killing relationships and definitely taking passion. I mean, you wrote about sexuality in relationship. It's very hard to feel sexual after you've spent hours with your partner trying to prove and disprove you prove your position and disprove their position. I mean, that is not romantic. Yeah. While sharing our authenticities is very romantic, and leads to closeness and warmth and the realization that diversity is erotic.
Yes.
So there is a shift. There is a shift in the way we are starting to see things, and we're opening that window. We're opening that window. Yeah.
So you have 2 or 3 chapters in your book around expanding tantric sexuality into activism, and I thought that was really a great contribution, to the tantric movement, because you also talk quite a bit about New Age narcissism, and I wrote it down: New Age narcissism and superficiality.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So what is your observation there? Because that's also a trigger point for me, is spiritual bypassing, superficiality, and New Age narcissism.
Yeah, Martin, I struggle a great deal with this New Age positive thinking. Let's just be positive. Let's just be positive. I mean, that's kind of like a delusion of the brain. I mean, reality is both difficult and tragic and beautiful, and we were given 2 eyes so we can see both at the same time and be human. I say, instead of being positive, I hate negative thinking, of course, but I don't like positive thinking. I say, how about human thinking? How about human thinking? How about authentic human thinking? Don't give me your positive mask, because we know it's not going to last. We know it's going to end up in an explosion or a depression or an anxiety attack. Give me your human, authentic, and let me learn to love that. Let me learn to love you as a human being, and not as a positive kind of actress or actor. But the relationship between, and so that takes us to sexuality. I mean, sexuality is, like Tantra would say, is an unbelievable metaphor about life. I mean, in sexuality, we are meeting somebody in their nakedness.
Yes.
And in their authenticity.
Yeah.
In their authenticity. There's no place to hide anymore. That is their body. That is what turns them on or doesn't turn them on. That's what
unless we turn on the lights and go under the sheets and close our eyes. And there is a form of sexuality, I guess, where both partners can hide.
I mean, we always find places to hide. You're right. But if we don't hide, we learn to celebrate the other person in their authenticity.
Yes.
We learn to fall in love and enjoy and be ecstatic about the true body of our partner. Now, that's number 1. Number 2 is, out of that love of the authentic reality of the other, we generate an amazing energy. We know that, right? I mean, it's an incredible energy. What do we do with that energy? Do we just keep it there for our own enjoyment? Yes, we want to enjoy it. But then becomes the issue, if that energy is created, let's take it to the world and use it for activism.
Yeah.
And great activists, a lot of them know that. They know that. I mean, when they're exhausted, they reach to their partner and they have a special romantic evening, and then they go celebrate by being sexually loving and passionate and giving with the other person, and that renews their energy.
Yeah.
But then we have to choose, what do we do with that energy? What the world gave us, the earth gave us that energy, let's give it back.
Yes. So you talk in the book, and I'm not coming to my real question, but you talk about the privatization of relationships as one thing, and you already talked about that, like take it to the next level, make it public in service of a greater good. And of course, that's the whole shebang of my book as well.
Exactly.
The other thing you write in there, and again, that resonates deeply with me, that you notice that a lot of activists are alone, because they're so passionate about, I guess, what they're doing, that only somebody who would share their passion would be
yes,
a potential partner. Otherwise, and I feel that often, I don't want to be distracted from my purpose. On the other side, I feel this aloneness, and would, my deepest yearning is to share that with somebody who shares. And so that kind of leads me to the question, what was, or what is your deepest yearning? I mean, obviously, writing a book is an arduous task, right? It takes discipline, and it's a lonely task. And I think every author is driven by some pain or by some longing that is expressed through the book. So what was your longing? What is your pain? What is your deepest yearning?
Yeah, this is these are very poignant questions, Martin. I started writing about 10 years ago, and I've already written, 4 or 5 books, and I'm in the process of finishing another 5 now. And it started about 10 years ago. I've spent, the first period of my life was in the peace movement in Lebanon. I mean, that's where I spent 15 years of my life, working in villages, in ghettos, in refugee camps. The second part of my life was being a trainer and a teacher at the institute that I had in Charlotte, North Carolina. Had several institutes there, but basically all with the purpose of teaching and helping and providing that kind of teaching for people who couldn't afford it. So we had umpteen scholarships. We wanted people who couldn't afford it to be exposed to some of the at-the-edge teaching. Then about 10 years ago, I felt the calling to write. And as you know, writing is a very, very difficult and lonely experience. I think... But
also very rewarding once it is done, right?
It is. I mean, to see that book in front of you is very rewarding. And as you know, the process is grueling. I mean, most authors will tell you that you have to be very passionate. And it's a very alone experience. It's a difficult one. So I've struggled with my own ghosts of loneliness. Now, what won't let me there? When I was growing up, I grew up in a very difficult family. My father was a very successful lawyer, very, very successful, and financially self-made man and political maverick and all of that. And my mother was struggling with manic depression, and she was not available. And so there was a lot of abuse, emotional abuse, a lot of abuse. And at the age of 13, I attempted suicide, but then I had a mystical experience that saved me from that. But what I realized that until the age of, 30 or something like that, I never had mentors, Martin. I never had mentors. I mean, I had never anybody in my life that came. I had my first girlfriend was my mentor, in the sense that she taught me a lot of things that I didn't even know existed, like kindness and warmth and all of that. I'd never received them before. But the deep wound in my life is the lack of mentoring, lack of somebody coming and talking to me that I could honor the tree that I am. And I went into I became a psychotherapeutic client. So in my 30s, I did as much psychotherapy as I could, because I realized I was bleeding. And it was a dual experience. Psychotherapy helped me a lot, but it also made me distrust myself even more. And there was very little mentors that would come say to me, Chris, there is something in you that you can trust. You can trust who you are. You can trust your intuition. You can trust your personality. You can trust your being, that you're not a defective car that needs to be sent back to Detroit, Yeah. And psychotherapy many times perpetuates the myth that we are defective cars. They don't realize that, yes, there's a lot to learn, but there is, again, that core. There is that core that I can trust. Yeah. So I started studying American Indian philosophy. I started studying the ancient Greeks before the coming of the great religions that, in a sense, contributed to a lot to the shaming of the self. Somehow the self is to be transcended. The self is sinful. The self is worthless. There is no self, and all of that.
Mhm.
So I went back to studying the ancient Greeks and the Phoenicians and the American Indians, and I realized how much they had that sense of pride in who they were, pride in a self. And if they did a mistake, they will pay for it, and they will atone, and they will apologize. But the core is always honored and respected. That deep love of self, that deep respect of who I am. Then that started changing my life. So my wound was, I was never mentored into that. Until the age of, I don't know, 35, 38, I never had a person look me in the eye and say, Chris, with whatever you've gone through, with the abuse, with the war, with the difficulty, but there is something in you can trust and you can love and you can rely on.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make sure that I can give that to others. So I gave it through to leading the workshops that I've done, and I've led more than 300 of these. And now I'm giving it through writing, just leaving a legacy to others. That's the wound that has guided me. And that's the passion out of the wound, because as you know, and you say that passion is born out of our wounds. And if we allow it, and that's the passion that was born.
But then somehow this idea, this yearning, this vision of sharing your authenticity, your passion, and your activism with a partner emerged. I mean, that must have emerged at some point, otherwise you could not have written this book.
Definitely.
So came that from an experience you had with a partner, or came it from the longing for such a partner?
Martin, both. I mean, it's the longing that you were talking about. I mean, the greatest longing that I have, and I think most of us who are conscious have, is for a partner that can love our authenticity as we love their authenticity, and can support and uphold our passion as we support and uphold their passion. I mean, once these two are there, there is extreme possibilities. Once I don't want a partner that wants to change me, and I don't want to change a partner. I want a partner that can really fall for my authenticity as I fall for theirs, and somebody that I can say to, I am there for your passion. I will back you up. I will support you, and they would say that to me. So the longing is there. Now, have I experienced that? Yes. Partially here and there, I have. In my last marriage, my ex-wife was very supportive of the work and the passion, and we actually co-directed the Olive Branch Center together, and she played a very big part of that. And I experienced with her that mutual support of passion, and that was
a co-creation of that.
Yeah. So there was partial experiences. What's interesting, and I think I'm interested to see what you think about that. I think we have moments where we taste that, and God, it tastes so good. When these two come together, we can be loved in our freedom. And there is a support of the passion of each other. It's like we taste the heavenly honey, right? I mean, it's like, now, can we maintain it or not? That's our journey, and that's our struggle.
I can just see the shining in your eyes, and
the taste is wonderful, isn't it? I mean, love, when it's love based on freedom and the sharing of the passion to give back to the world. I mean, it's heaven on earth. I mean, it's heaven on earth, and it renews our energy. We feel younger, we feel stronger, we feel more courageous, we feel more daring. We feel, we feel that we are loved in who we are, that my body, my personality, even my lacks, what I bring and what I don't bring, all of that package is worthy of somebody holding them. And I can give them the same thing. I can hold it with that erotic, romantic honoring of the other person. These are moments in heaven, but now, it takes a lot of consciousness and will and consciousness and desire to evolve, to be able to hold these moments and not get lost into role playing and who's correct, who's not correct, and imposing our view on others. It's a big journey.
So can you share a little bit why that relationship ended, and what the learning was, and what we can learn from from that experience?
What I have learned is that the thing with authenticity is that it's not automatic and it's not guaranteed. That let's say if you and I decide to do a project together, we might realize with time that our authenticities, you and I, can co-create very well.
They complement each other.
But we also can realize the opposite. We can realize that your authenticity is taking you in a direction too far from mine. So the why a lot of people are afraid of authenticity is that they realize, oh my God, well, what if I discover that we don't match? And that's something to be accepted. So what I've learned for myself is that it's not enough to be authentic. I have to also be genuine in realizing that sometimes my authenticity and the authenticity of my partner take us in different directions. And that's what happened in my last marriage, is that we went in two different directions, and we kept the respect, and we still have the respect. And when we divorced, we didn't hire lawyers. We wrote it together. Actually, the evening where we signed the papers, we went to dinner together and we celebrated and honored each other. And that was beautiful. That was really beautiful. And after that, we still are in touch. We still honor each other, respect each other. Because it was a separation based on authenticity, that, we realized that our who we are did come together for a while, but after these three grew separate. These three grew separate, and we had to respect that. And it was wonderful to, I will never forget that evening after signing the paper, not at the lawyer, but at the mediator. We went directly to our favorite restaurant and made a toast to each other and offered gratitude to each other. And we both had tears in our eyes and we were crying. And we said we're losing a lot, but we're losing it in the name of truth, not in the name of hatred or things turning sour.
Conflict,
consciousness,
shaming, blaming.
Right, no shame and no correct. It's not that I had the correct position or she did. Trees can sometimes grow close to each other, and sometimes they can grow and to accept that. That's my learning. I have to. For me, it has been a long journey in giving up the paradigm of change. If it is in my work, my professional work as a coach, it's not about change. It's about self-revelation and co-creation and the affirmation and honoring of identity. Or if it's in relationships, because my brain has been brainwashed that if I'm loving enough, I'm seductive enough, if I'm good enough, if I'm sweet enough, somehow my partner will change for me.
Yeah.
And you can be as sweet as you want to an oak tree or a palm tree. It's not going to change. But somehow I thought it would. I thought I could change the tree by being really sweet, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah.
So there is an acceptance, an acceptance of what is, an acceptance, and that is I'm growing more and more into that, and hopefully I will keep on growing and keep on cleaning up that old brainwashing.
Yeah. So Liz shared a while ago a person's preference for sharing authenticity versus establishing correctness, in parentheses, like a regular practice mental habit, sounds like a difference of level of consciousness. It sounds like amber blue, which is like the mythic conformist traditional gender roles, versus the green, which is like we're all the same and we all want to be loved and we're all connected and we're all one. And at the same time, everybody creates their own reality.
Yeah, very much so. It's a different level of consciousness. I mean, change is like kids at the age of 12 playing and wanting to get the ball and prove to the other person that they should They should have the ball and fighting over it to, like you're saying, a higher consciousness where they realize that people are who they are, and I have to actually support their destiny. You know, in many mystical traditions, the greatest destructive thing we can do is block somebody's destiny. Block somebody's destiny. Rather than accept it, support it, bless it, honor it, let it be. But if we block somebody else's destiny, yeah, you're right. Your person who wrote that, it's a higher consciousness, and that's the sadness about it, is that, and the beauty is that we cannot avoid evolving. We can't avoid it.
Yeah. So I still can't get this out of my mind. You know, looking at human history, and specifically the last 10,000 years after the emergence of agriculture and male ownership of land, and eventually, patriarchy, it seems like we're in a huge shift now, where as women enter the public sphere, and there's now 70% of college students are girls, right? So we see this huge empowerment, and that, when I grew up, there was still quite a difference, that men had more rights and responsibilities in the public sphere, and more support in expressing their purpose or their authenticity. And even in my life, my first two wives, they supported me in realizing my purpose. And in hindsight, I see that I didn't support them at all. I just thought their purpose is to support me in my purpose. And so I see a lot of women now who claim their own female authority. It's a great book. Or their own, identity, and they now discover that they want to live their own life, and they want the man in their life who supports them. Right. So I know a lot of activists who say, I want a man who has the money and the technical skills to support me in living my purpose. And so, of course, that just like flips things around in a way. Or they just go like, I don't, I want to be in a relationship, but I don't want a man who shares my purpose, because otherwise I feel I would be pushed back in this role of support person, specifically with somebody like us who thought these things through, right, to a large extent. And so, do you have experience around that? And what is sort of like your advice for me and for others? How can I show up in my authentic leadership in that area, right? And at the same time, don't give the woman a potential partner the feeling, and I mean that is for every activist who's very passionate about his field, that there is still then some kind of inequality.
Well,
before you answer, I just want to share that these ideas are a great reminder to lead and meet people with one's authenticity. Liz writes that this seems like a hard thing for many people because of fear of rejection at the get-go. But that's a good thing, laughing out loud. We want people to self-select out, reject us if we don't suit each other. And it's a great reminder to develop our own loving of ourselves, to have a solidness of ourselves and confidence in our authenticity. So that plays a little bit into that. But of course, I'm so passionately, and outline in my book how important it is that males and females co-create our future as opposites and equals, and not as males creating the future and then women rewarding males, if they create a future that women like, which some other people don't like.
Yes, and that's a tremendously important thing. Let me comment really quickly on the rejection thing. I think that, positive thinking, we want all our life to be positive, and we create our life and we create all those good things, and they have to be all good. But and I think that's not true from my perspective. The reality is that the journey is made of great breakthroughs and great blessings, but it's made also of great lacks and great defeats. And these defeats become sacred because they are part of the journey of consciousness, of evolution. They are part of the mythic journey. They are part of the courageous journey. So getting rejected is part of the defeats in our life. And we have to create a space for that. We have to create a space for our defeats and respect them and accept them and grieve them. But accept that, I have I had a lot of success in my life, a lot of success, but I had a lot of defeats too. And I had a lot of honorings and I had rejections, and to be able to realize that's part of the journey. But going back to what you were speaking, I mean, it's a great opportunity we have now that women are coming into the public sphere. I mean, it's a great opportunity. It's a historical crossroad.
Yeah, I agree.
And it could transform a lot of stuff. And thank you for these courageous women that are leading the way into claiming their rights, claiming their voice. I would say, and I beg my sisters, I beg them to be very careful not to embrace. You can reject patriarchy, but embrace its ideas. And I beg them to be very careful. I mean, if women go into this place of who's on top rather than how do we co-create, like you were saying, or if they embrace the idea of correctness and they enter into my correct position versus your incorrect position, we're still in the old dialogue.
Yeah.
So I beg from the women who are leading us really in a whole new century is please be very aware to reject these ideas, as well as patriarchy in general. Is just reject the ideas of correctness and domination, so we can come to really a true co-creation. And that's so important that we come to a place of mutuality. I mean, I come back to these two, and an incredible mutual respect of the freedom of authenticity of each person. I mean, take the sexual metaphor. I mean,
sorry for interrupting. That there is then also somewhat a subtle implication of I have to come into my authenticity, but on my own. I mean, there's always this fine line between individuation and individualism, and then hyper-individualism and New Age narcissism going in one direction, right? Like where many women feel they just have enough of men, right? And they have to go it alone. And on the other side, to be codependent or slip back into some old relationship patterns, because we don't have many role models of these new relationships. There are some, and I say again, I see that these are mostly younger people, that are co-creating these new kind of relationships.
Very much the younger people. And that's why we have to support the younger generation. We have to really support them, because they truly are carrying a great hope. I mean, I remember one time, Martin, I was at the Institute. And I was closing, it was the evening. And then these two young people come, they were traveling. They were like, I don't know, 28 or something, a young woman and a young man, just beautiful people. They were traveling from the north and, backpacking or whatever. So they knocked at the door. They said, oh, we saw the sign, I want to know what you guys do. So I was really excited. I was like telling them about authenticity, the freedom to be who we are, and then to enter into co-creation around solidarity and social service, and I was so excited. And then they looked at me and they said, "Is that all? Because that's obvious."
Yeah.
For a moment, I felt so little, but I felt so happy. Happy, but I felt so little. It's like, I mean, all this passion, and they're telling me like, "Oh, that's obvious." Authenticity and activism and co-creation, So we have to support the young people. We have to support them, because as you probably experience, when I bring the message of authenticity, heart, and solidarity, it's mainly the young people that relate. Because a lot of older people if they have betrayed their authenticity for a long time, they need a mythic courage to be able to say, yes, I did betray my authenticity. Now I want to go back to it. Fine. And some of them don't want to. They don't want to, don't touch it. Don't touch it. But the young people, I mean, my God, we're seeing, and that's in my book, Second Wave Spirituality. I mean, I am seeing, and I speak about it in the upcoming book called The Rebellion of the Heart. Young people all over the world, in Judaism, in Islam, in Christianity, atheists, Buddhists, are going beyond the paradigm of religion and ideology into the paradigm of authenticity and service.
Yeah.
I mean, in my country of origin, Lebanon, that is part of the Middle East, we have today an explosion of humanitarian nonprofit organizations. When Muslims and Christians are coming together, like we have some for gay rights, and that's, you're talking about the Middle East, like working for gay rights, working for animal protection, working for ecology. Who are leading them? The young people.
Yeah. I was just in Israel last year, and I'm honored to be invited to go to Turkey in 2 weeks and teach there and work with, not only teach, but really work with the largest coaching academy there, which is all run by women. There's not, they sent me the pictures, and it's basically all 6 or 8 women who run that ID
awesome.
Coaching International, and they're very interested in evolutionary or integral relationships and shared purpose and passion and things like that. So it's interesting that, and I can't wait to learn just about, what motivates them and the cultural differences. But still, there is I would like more of people of our generation to be role models for these young people, and not only as individual activists like you and I and many others. And I know so many people, starting with Ken Wilber, right, and all the way down, people in that whole what we call that movement, right? This evolutionary movement. Who are single, right? And often the men open up to me, maybe off the record, and say, I have this deep longing of finding a woman. And very often the women, again, it's like a little bit my mantra, still struggle with this. How can I co-create with a man when I felt for 40, 50, 60 years that men have dominated women and are not?
Unfortunately, the paradigm
show up. What is the invitation we can make?
And I mean, it's challenging. It is really challenging, because the old paradigm is one of domination and correctness. Who's correct and who dominates? Will I be dominated or will I dominate? And to be able to come out of that paradigm and go in a paradigm, like, I know you're passionate about the idea of co-creation, so am I. The co-creation of two freedoms coming together. And we have to accept, Martin, that there will be failures. I mean, we're moving into the next step of humanity here, and we are learning. We might be well intentioned, but we have to be willing to learn. But we have to be willing to move out of the paradigm of I want to dominate or I don't want to be dominated, and get out of that. And go into truly co-creation. And we have to accept that as we do that, there'll be failures. And, we need partners and we need to be that way, that will ride the waves of failure and success. Not, it's like surfing, the waves goes up and down and up and down. And not run away when we say, what, we had a failure in this issue. Let's start again. Let's start again. Love can take us, because it's experimenting with something totally new to move out of the paradigm of domination into the paradigm of passion and love and honoring the other's body and the other's freedom. They're gorgeous ideas and they're gorgeous ideals, but they're new to us. I mean, young people have a better chance, but we are all new. We are all moving into here we are. The world is being challenged, where we might lose democracy. We might self-destruct. On the other hand, we have openings that are happening that are fantastic.
Yeah. I just want to pull up the cover of your book, for ending, because again, it's so great to me, and I don't feel any competitiveness. Some people in our world are very competitive. No, I want to present my book and my ideas, and I'm not. And I really felt this soul connection between you and Andrew Harvey, and my passion, and of course other people who have that passion.
And your work, books, and your writings. Thank you. I mean, thank you. I feel the same. It's we're we're helping each other in this journey. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a great compliment. That's what I wanted to say. Not a compliment, but a compliment. What you created, and it's also so interesting that you we kind of we wrote these books at the same time without even knowing
Right.
about each other.
Right. We're like you started by saying, we're part of this movement of evolution. We are part of it. Much more than we realize.
There we go. So I just want to show it real quick to the end. So here it is.
Thank you. Great.
Evolutionary Love Relationships, Passion, Authenticity, and Activism. Wonderful book. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and also part of your vulnerability and your longing. And I always try to, get us out of our head and really share myself and invite my guests to share what's in their heart, what is their longing, what is driving and motivating them to do this important work.
Well, Martin, thank you. It has been a pleasure to get to know you and to be with you, and it's been a pleasure to dialogue with you. I feel like your questions and your comments and how you led us into a great conversation, and I feel very grateful and very happy to have come to know you at in a short time, but it's a profound time.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll do that again. I'm already booked into July. So next Saturday, we have Dr. Mark Foreman, who wrote the book Integral Psychology, a good friend. And whoever might want to make the trip in 2 weeks to Turkey, we're specifically looking for men because there is many women signed up already there. So check it out on integralrelationship.com.
Great, awesome. And Martin, will I get something that I can share on Facebook?
Yes, I will share the recording of our conversation.
Great. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it, and the best in your trip to Turkey, in your work, and your writing. And thank you for the books that you have brought to us.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for everyone who joined us live. Liz, Michael, Eileen. Eileen shared authenticity comes from self-love and having the confidence that whatever you are speaking is the right thing for everyone involved, whether they know it or not. Thank you, Eileen. Okay, you all have a great weekend, and hopefully I'll see you all next Saturday.
All right, you too, Martin.
Yeah, bye-bye.